My name is Mike. I'm 47 years old, and I want to share my story and maybe get some advice along the way. This all happened 12 years ago when I was married to Emma, my first wife. We'd been together for 7 years and had 2 beautiful kids, Lily, who was 5, and Noah, who was 3. Life was pretty ordinary, nothing extraordinary but solid until everything came crashing down one day. Started like any other morning. I was on my way to work when a car came speeding into my lane and smashed into mine head-on. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed, covered in bandages and a cast. A nurse told me I'd been in a coma for 2 days. I remember shaking my doctor's hand and thanking him for saving my life. I was so grateful to still be breathing, but I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. A week into my hospital stay, the doctor sat me down and broke the news. My lower body was paralyzed. There was a good chance I'd never walk again. Hearing those words was like a punch to the gut. Emma, who was sitting by my side, burst into tears. I could tell she was overwhelmed. She was going to have to handle everything on her own, the house, the kids, and now me. I spiraled into a deep depression. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that my life would now revolve around a wheelchair. I spent hours staring at the empty walls of my hospital room, grieving the life I thought I'd have. I kept thinking about the things I'd never do again. Kicking a soccer ball around with Lily and Noah, dancing with Emma, or just feeling free. And then Emma started to drift away. At first, she'd bring the kids to visit 3 times a week, and those moments became my lifeline. Seeing my family was the only thing keeping me going. But as the days went by, her visits became fewer and farther between. I begged her to come more often, to bring Lily and Noah. But one day, she finally said what I'd been dreading. I can't spend my life with someone who's disabled. I'm still young and attractive. I deserve a normal man. I can't say I didn't see it coming. I'd felt her pulling away, growing colder toward me. But hearing those words out loud, it shattered me, and I never expected it to happen so fast. About a month after the accident, friends started coming to me with whispers about Emma. They said they'd seen her out at coffee shops and malls, walking arm in arm with some middle-aged guy, probably in his 50s. Some claimed she'd been having an affair long before the accident. Others suggested she'd latched onto this grumpy, overweight guy out of desperation after everything happened to me. Either way, it stung. I was still lying in a hospital bed, barely 2 months into my recovery, when I found out she had already filed for divorce. Looking back, I may sound calm sharing all this now, but at the time, I was furious. I was shattered. My life had flipped upside down in the blink of an eye. I was stuck in a wheelchair, broke, divorced, and completely lost. I had no savings to fall back on. Everything I earned had gone toward taking care of the family, paying bills, covering the kids' school expenses. Saving money was never even an option. Thankfully, insurance covered part of my medical bills, but the rest wiped out whatever I had left. By the time I was discharged, I had nothing to my name. I felt this mix of rage, despair, and hopelessness bubbling inside me. I wanted to scream, punch a wall, do something to let it all out. But deep down, something kept me hanging on. Maybe it was the thought of revenge, or maybe just sheer stubbornness. When I finally got out of the hospital, I had nowhere to go but back to my parents' house. So there I was, 35 years old, divorced, jobless, and totally dependent on my mom. My mom, Nancy, was 62 at the time and ran a small flower shop in the suburbs. Between her modest income and retirement benefits, she managed to keep us afloat. She never once made me feel like a burden, even though I felt like one every single day. Relying on her was the most humbling and humiliating thing I've ever had to do. Shortly after I moved in, I decided to visit my kids. I wanted to see Lily and Noah so badly, but when I got to the house, it was locked up tight. A neighbor filled me in. Emma had moved out with the kids. She was living with her new boyfriend. Apparently, he was a divorced, overweight man who'd been married 3 times but had tons of money and no kids of his own. The neighbors didn't hold back. They called her a gold digger, said she was with him for his fortune. I managed to track down their new address and showed up at their house. But when Emma opened the door, she flat out refused to let me see the kids. She said they were already calling this guy Daddy, and that my showing up would only confuse them. I begged her to let me spend time with Lily and Noah, but instead, she threatened to file a restraining order if I didn't leave her alone. I didn't have a cent to my name to fight her in court. I was completely at her mercy. It hadn't even been 6 months since the accident, barely a few months since the divorce, and there she was, already playing house with someone else. Couldn't believe it. I asked her how she could move on so quickly, how she could just leave me like I never mattered. I know it sounds childish now, but back then I was desperate. I begged her to give me a chance to prove I was still worth something, to prove I could still be a father and a husband. She didn't just say no. She humiliated me. She called me a loser and told me I was nothing but a weight around her neck. When I asked if she cheated on me before the divorce was finalized, she smirked and said it was none of my business. Then she told me never to show my face at her door again. I stood there, frozen, as everything we'd been through together flashed through my mind. 7 years of marriage, 2 kids, a life we'd built, and she replaced me in the blink of an eye. I walked away from her doorstep with tears streaming down my face, feeling more broken than ever. When I got back home that day, I felt utterly humiliated and defeated. I broke down in front of my mom, crying like a child. She didn't judge me. She just sat there, comforting me, telling me everything would be okay. She was the one who inspired me to take control of my life again, even though I had no idea where to start. To get back on my feet, I began working with her at the flower shop. At first, I just helped with small tasks, making bouquets, serving customers, cleaning up. But as time went on, I started to see the shop's untapped potential. My mom, Nancy, had been running it all on her own, but her age and health made it hard to manage. I knew I could help her grow it into something bigger. So, I reached out to some old acquaintances and started networking. I pitched the idea of contracting with event management companies to supply flowers, and to my surprise, it worked. Slowly, I built a small team and began taking orders for event decorations. Over time, I transitioned into running my own event management company. It wasn't easy. It took 12 long years of hard work to rebuild my life, but I did it. And through all of it, my mom was my biggest cheerleader. She stood by me, encouraging me, helping me stay focused on my goals. About a year after the accident, I heard that Emma was leaving town with Lily, Noah, and her boyfriend. Desperate to see my kids, I rushed to her house, but they were already gone. It wasn't the first time I tried to see them. Every attempt I made to connect with my kids ended the same way, with Emma chasing me away, insulting me, or threatening legal action. She had full custody, and because I was physically and financially powerless at the time, I couldn't fight back. On top of that, she'd managed to get a restraining order against me, making it nearly impossible to even approach my children. Meanwhile, her boyfriend, this wealthy guy with inherited assets, had all the money and connections to back her up. Whether he'd been in her life before my accident or showed up afterward, I'll never know. All I knew was that for 12 years, every time I got a lead on where my kids were, I tried to see them only to be turned away. Emma even threatened to have me arrested if I kept trying. Ironically, that man never married her in all those years, despite them living together. A year ago, after years of rebuilding my life, I decided it was finally time to fight for joint custody. My event management business had stabilized enough that I could afford a good lawyer. I filed my petition and, after a lengthy process, was granted 15 days of custody. Next week, my kids will be flying in to see me for the first time in over a decade. Emma tried everything to block my petition, but my attorney made sure the court heard my side of the story. Thankfully, Lily and Noah are old enough now that the judge asked if they wanted to meet me, and they said yes. Knowing that my kids want to see me is the greatest gift I could have hoped for. As the day approaches, I feel a mix of emotions. I'm nervous, excited, and honestly, a little scared. I know I can't make up for the 12 years I lost, but I want to spend every moment I have with them making up for the time we missed. This is my chance to reconnect with my children, and I'm ready to give them everything I can. Lori is now 17, and Lucas is 15. I know teenagers can be tough to deal with, demanding, moody, sometimes downright toxic. I just hope they're not too angry or resentful when they're here. I've spent the last 12 years wondering what stories Emma's been feeding them about me. Should I tell them the truth about their mother? Or is that a conversation best left alone? I don't know. I'm nervous and excited all at once. Update 1. I missed a couple of important details in my earlier posts. First, about my wife, Emmy. Yes, I remarried 5 years ago. Emmy is amazing. She's an interior designer, and we actually met through work. Back then, I was still figuring out the flower shop business, and Emmy was designing a wedding venue where I was supplying flowers. It wasn't love at first sight or anything, but we hit it off right away. For months, we kept running into each other at events and became good friends. Emmy was a single mom with a 3-year-old daughter, Mia. She was the one who encouraged me to start my own event management company, using her experience and connections to help me get started. We became business partners, and after a year of dating, we got married. Now we're a happy little family of 4. Emmy, Mia, my mom, and me. Mia adores having a grandmother, and my mom loves having a granddaughter to spoil. The second thing I forgot to mention is about the accident. The truck that hit me belonged to a logistics company, and they were supposed to compensate me. But they got out of it by twisting the facts of the case and making it look like the accident was my fault. Back then, I didn't have the resources to fight them, so I didn't get a dime. After Emmy and I got married, she encouraged me to refile the lawsuit since we could now afford a good lawyer. The case is still in court, but our attorney is optimistic about the outcome. If we win, it could be a significant financial relief. Back to my story. As I mentioned earlier, 3 months ago, Lori and Lucas were supposed to move in with me for the first time in 12 years. I was thrilled but also incredibly nervous. Emmy was my rock. She kept me calm and reassured me every step of the way. The day they arrived, I went to the airport to pick them up. Seeing them after all these years was overwhelming. Lori is 17 now and absolutely stunning, and Lucas, at 15, has grown into a charming young man. But despite the warm greetings, the ride home was awkward. The 3 of us were so stiff, like strangers trying to make small talk. I asked them about school, their town, and their hobbies, steering clear of anything about their mom. They didn't bring her up either. Mostly, they were quiet, like they were waiting for the chance to put in their headphones the way teenagers do. When we got home, Emmy was there to greet us. She had everything ready. The guest room was prepped, lunch was made, and she was as welcoming as ever. But the kids seemed shocked. It was like they didn't expect me to have a wife. I couldn't figure out why it surprised them. If their mom could live with another man just months after our divorce, why couldn't I remarry? At lunch, Emmy tried to ease the tension by telling them about the vacation we'd planned for the whole family. Their reactions were mixed, neither excited nor against it. They just sat there, neutral. Emmy and I exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of what to make of it. After lunch, Lori and Lucas went to their room and locked the door. Emmy and I were left standing in the living room, wondering what we'd done wrong. Not long after the kids arrived, I got a call from Emma. She was furious, accusing me of deceiving Lori and Lucas. She said I had only brought them to my house so Emmy and I could manipulate them. Her words left me completely dumbfounded. She went on to accuse me of hiding my marriage to Emmy, claiming I'd intentionally kept it from the kids. I was stunned. I'd done nothing of the sort, and her accusations made no sense. When I hung up, she kept calling back, unwilling to let it go. I decided to get to the root of the problem. That evening, I called Lori and Lucas into the living room and asked them directly what was going on. At first, they were quiet, avoiding eye contact. But after a long pause, they finally opened up. They were angry because they believed I had abandoned them. Emma had spent years feeding them lies, twisting the truth, and filling their heads with deceit. Hearing this broke my heart, but I knew I had to set the record straight. I told them everything. I explained how it was their mother who had left, running off with another man only months after the accident. I told them how she had disappeared with them into her boyfriend's house and shut me out of their lives completely. I shared how she'd threatened me with restraining orders and used her boyfriend's wealth to ensure I couldn't fight back. I even showed them the court orders and the stack of denied requests I'd filed over the years just to see them. As I spoke, the memories seemed to come back to them. They were kids back then, but they remembered pieces of what had happened. We all broke down crying. They finally understood the truth. Lucas admitted that he had once tried to reach out to me through social media. But Emma caught him and manipulated him emotionally, convincing him to promise he'd never contact me again. Hearing that just crushed me. They also opened up about their life with Emma's boyfriend. Lucas shared how he and Lori were often scolded and belittled by him. They were humiliated at family gatherings because Emma and her boyfriend were not officially married. While he paid for their school fees, there was no love or fatherly presence in their lives. It hurt deeply to know how much my children had endured. When everything was finally out in the open, we hugged and cried together. It was a moment of raw emotion and connection that I will never forget. Afterward, we went on a week-long vacation to Florida. It was perfect, a chance for all of us to bond and create new memories. Lori and Lucas warmed up to Emmy and Mia, who turned 8 this year. Watching my family come together was a dream come true. By the end of the trip, Lori and Lucas were posting group photos on social media with captions like, "Happy Family." Seeing that made my heart swell with joy. But, of course, Emma wasn't happy. As soon as she saw the pictures, she called Lori and Lucas, berating them for what she called their foolish behavior. She accused them of betraying her for bonding with us and even sent me a message, threatening to cut off my access to the kids if I continued turning them against her. I couldn't help but laugh at her empty threats. She had no power over us anymore, and I wasn't going to let her ruin the precious time I finally had with my children. The vacation ended on a high note, and for the first time in years, I felt like things were finally falling into place. My family was healing, and I couldn't be happier. After returning from our vacation, Lori and Lucas met with my parents. My mom and dad were overjoyed to see them, and it warmed my heart to see those family ties being restored. Before they left, the kids promised to keep in touch despite Emma's threats. They admitted they felt stifled living in her house and assured me they planned to move in with me as soon as they finished school. I hugged them tightly before saying goodbye. When they returned to Emma, they confronted her about everything. They told her they knew the truth about her actions. True to form, she twisted the narrative and accused me of manipulating them. Despite her antics, it's been a few months now, and we've stayed in regular contact. I'm hopeful they'll move in soon, and if anything changes, I'll be sure to share. Update 2. A lot has happened in the last 6 months. Shortly after my first meeting with the kids, the legal case against the logistics company that caused my accident was finally resolved. And guess what? I received a substantial settlement, not only for the accident but also for the injustice of the first trial. When I shared the news with Lori and Lucas, they were just as excited as I was. I promised them they'd be living with me permanently soon. A month later, Emma showed up at my office unannounced. She took my hand and apologized, something I never expected. I was stunned. She confessed that after my accident, she felt desperate and saw no way out. She explained that the man she'd moved in with wanted a sugar baby. I didn't even know what that meant until I Googled it later that day. Apparently, he'd had bad experiences with younger women who took his money and ran, so he decided on someone less young, who he thought would be loyal. Emma, 32 at the time, fit the bill. According to her, having 2 kids made her seem like a safe bet for the guy. He promised to provide for her and pay for Lori and Lucas's education, but he made it clear he'd never marry her. She agreed to his terms, believing it was the only way to ensure a stable future for the kids. I was furious. I asked her why she didn't come to me or give me a chance to recover and rebuild. She claimed she didn't think I could provide the same life he offered. Her whining and excuses infuriated me, and I finally snapped, yelling at her. I told her that if she had truly cared about our children's future, she would have discussed it with me instead of abandoning me without warning. Emma then shifted tactics, trying to appeal to my emotions. She brought up our wedding day, the birth of our kids, all the happy memories we once shared. But I shut her down. I told her I wasn't that person anymore, and those memories meant nothing to me now. She went even further, saying that she and the kids were my real family, not Emmy and Mia. She tried to demean Emmy and even had the audacity to say I could never have a normal family with them. Her cruelty stunned me. She insisted I take her back so we could reunite as a family. I made it crystal clear. Emmy and Mia are my family, and I love them deeply. I told her there was no place for her in my life. When she refused to leave and started making a scene, I threatened to call the police, and only then did she finally storm out. Later that day, I told Emmy and my mom about what had happened. Emmy, being the mature and understanding person she is, was upset but didn't let it escalate into drama. My mom, however, didn't hold back. She admitted she'd never liked Emma and thought she was selfish from the start. My mom even speculated that Emma only came back because of the money I received from the settlement. Honestly, I couldn't disagree. When Lori and Lucas found out about their mother's behavior, they confronted her. They told her to control her temper and leave me alone. Somehow, her sugar daddy found out about the whole incident and threatened to kick her out if she tried contacting me again. For once, I was grateful to him. The latest news. The best news of all is that Lori and Lucas are moving in with us this month. They'll stay with us for a while before starting college nearby. They're excited about living in the dorms and experiencing college life, but we've agreed to stay in close touch while giving each other the space to grow. As for Emma, the kids have turned their backs on her. She's left with nothing but her sugar daddy. I can only hope she enjoys her sweet life while it lasts, because we all know how quickly that kind of life can turn bitter. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like.